All right, can everybody give it up for Mackenzie and Janessa? They knew that they were doing that about an hour before that started.
They did great.
They did wonderful. I'm glad that they did it this week. Hopefully they can do it next week. I don't want to do it next week, so hopefully they're back. But today I wanted to talk to you guys about Matthew 13, right? I was doing a 6-month Bible plan, and it started in July. It's going July to December. It's a chapter a day in the New Testament, and Matthew 13, it really stuck out to me. I was like, this is something I really want to preach on because I think it's just a really powerful message. And so Matthew 13 is on the parables, right? It's teachings of Jesus. And so for those of you who don't know what a parable is, Jesus, he spoke in parables. He wanted to preach in parables just so that people would have an easier way of understanding what the gospel message was, right? If Jesus preached at them the gospel message and was like, if you don't repent and turn from your evil ways, if he only did that, that's not what he wanted to do. He didn't want to only preach the gospel message. He wanted to preach in parables, a more common sense, and because some people didn't understand what he was saying, he wanted to simplify it for them and kind of dumb it down for some who weren't religious scholars and just give them an easier way of understanding what the overall message was of Christianity and the gospel. He didn't want to only preach to the Pharisees and those who understood everything already. And so Matthew 13, I'm going to be speaking out of the ESV version, and my title is The Teachings of Jesus, but we're going to start in verse 1. The parable of the sower. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea, and great crowds gathered about him, so that he got into a boat and sat down. And the whole crowd stood on the beach, and he told them many things in parables, saying. And so I'm going to stop right there. And these aren't the most famous parables by Jesus, but like I said, he wanted to speak in parables to these people just so that they could understand. Some of his more popular parables are the parable of the lost sheep, right? When he left the 99 to find the one, right? A lot of people might not understand, if the kingdom of heaven is like leaving 99 people just sitting there and, I'm going to go and find the one. He wanted to simplify it to something that they would understood in their time, which was a shepherd who left 99 sheep who he knew would stay there, and he went and seeked out the one. Another one would be on the laborers in the vineyard, where he was speaking of a master who was looking for people to work for him, and at 8 a.m. he went out and was looking for workers. He said, I will pay you 1 denarius, which I don't know how much that was worth, but that was a lot of money in that time. And he said, I'm going to give you a denarius if you work for me the whole day. And so people came, and then at noon, he said he needed more people. So he went back out and said, I'll give you all a denarius if you work for me. And then 4 p.m. he did the same thing. And then when it was time for everybody to get paid, he went out and he gave the last people 1 denarius. And then he gave the people who worked at noon a denarius. And then he gave the people who started working at 8 a.m. a denarius. And those people who started working at 8 a.m., they were like, why are we getting paid the same amount as the people who just came here, who just have been working for 2-3 hours? And so he said, the master then said, don't tell me what to do with my money. The kingdom of heaven will be like this. The last will come first, and the first shall be last. And it's just like how the gospel message is. Like, if you come to the faith early in your life or late in your life, like Jesus will find you, and your reward will be the same in the kingdom of heaven. That's basically what some of these parables were. And those are just a couple examples of a few. But going back to verse 4, a sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seeds fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground where they did not have much soil, and immediately they sprang up, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. He who has ears, let him hear. And so basically we just have these 4 types of seeds that Jesus is talking about. We got seeds that just fell along the path, and birds came and got them. We got the seeds that fell on the rocky ground, and they couldn't really sprout because they had no roots. And then we had the third seeds that fell among thorns, and they got choked away. They didn't end up growing anything. There were just thorns with them too. And then we have the good seeds who fell on good soil and produced grain, some 100-fold, 60 and 30. And so then we go into verse 10, and it's very powerful to me. It says, "Then the disciples came and said to him, 'Why do you speak to them in parables?'" And I'm going to stop right there, because the disciples were different from his whole crowd. Everybody most of the people in his crowd didn't know the gospel message, and so he was speaking to them in these common sense kind of parables. But the disciples said, "Why are you speaking to them like this? Why are you speaking to them in these parables?" Because the disciples did not yet understand what Jesus was trying to do. He was trying to simplify things for everybody. Because the disciples who may have been following Jesus it doesn't tell us when in Jesus' ministry that this parable took place, but it could have been weeks, it could have been months, it could have been 1 or 2 or 3 years that these disciples have been following him every single day. These disciples were the same ones who saw him feed 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fish, the same people who had seen Jesus do all of these healings, and yet they didn't understand why he was speaking to these people in common sense. And so Jesus explains that in verse 11. It's very powerful. He answered them, "To you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not yet been given. For to the one who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. This is why I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. Indeed, in their case, the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled. It says, 'You will indeed hear, but never understand, and you will indeed see, but never perceive.'" Because a lot of people, their hearts have just turned away from God. They'll hear 1 ounce of the Christian doctrine and they'll be like, "Nope, I don't want to listen to that." They'll hear "Jesus loves you," and they'll just be like, "Boom, I don't want to listen to that. I don't care." But Jesus understood that, hey, some of these people don't know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven. They don't have their ears open. They don't have their eyes seeing. They're not looking for the gospel message. So in turn, Jesus is speaking to them in common sense and then explaining what the gospel message is. And so it's very important that he did that. And then we go into verse 15. "For this people's heart has grown dull, and with their ears they can barely hear, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart and turn, and I would heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For truly I say to you, many prophets and righteous people longed to see what you see and did not see it, and to hear what you hear and did not hear it." And so I think of that today and kind of try and look at that, how we can hear that today. Because obviously we aren't Jesus' main disciples, right? Like, we didn't see Jesus do all these teachings. We didn't see him do all these healings. But at the end of the day, most of the people in this room, I'm sure, if not all, most of us are strong Christians, and we have been for a decent amount of time, right? And so we've seen some of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven. We have seen the miracles and the works that God has done in our lives and people around us. And so we don't understand why people wouldn't turn to Christ. Sometimes it's hard for us to understand, hey, why would this person not go to Jesus in their time of need? Why would they continue to go to the things of the world? And it's our eyes are blessed, our ears are blessed, because we've seen and we've heard all the wonderful things that Jesus has done. We've read them through the scriptures. And so it's important that we just thank God, and we're just grateful for everything he's given us, and how he's given us the opportunity to just see and hear the things he's done in our lives. And so then Jesus explains the parable of the sower. But before then, it's important, like, for us to realize that some people don't see what we see, and for us to sometimes simplify it and to give these good examples like Jesus did, and to simplify the kingdom of heaven and the message so that people might see and so that people might hear. Because a lot of times, because of how people have grown up, their relationship with their family, how things around them have affected them, it's hard for them to want to come to Christ and to come to Christianity and to come to heaven, because they just feel like they've been so broken that they really don't want to come. And so it's important for us to understand that, hey, our eyes have been blessed. We've seen all the things God has done in our lives, but some others don't have the same blessing, and they haven't seen it. And so then Jesus goes into explaining the parable of the sower, which starts in verse 18. Hear then the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. This is what was sown along the path. So those first set of seeds, those that just got thrown on the path, and then the birds came and stole them. That's just like when anyone hears the word of the kingdom and doesn't understand it. So this is like, let's say, I don't want to use a terrible example, but let's say somebody hears Jesus loves you and Jesus loves everything, and they don't really understand that. And so they're like, if he loves me, then he's affirming everything I do. And so then I'm just going to continue to live in this worldly way, and he's still going to love me. He doesn't have a problem with it, right? Which is wrong, because sometimes these people hear these things and don't understand it. And that's just like these seeds that Jesus was talking about. The evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. And then we go into verse 20. As for what was sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no root in himself, but endures for a while. And when tribulation or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately he falls away. And there are a lot of people who fall into this category too. I will say I've fallen into it during a season of my life as well. Because you'll go to church camps, you'll go to worship events, you'll go to all these wonderful things, and you're like, man, I'm just on fire for Christ right now. Like, I love Jesus so, like, I'm living in this great lifestyle. And then when you come home from that and you start facing the persecution and like trials and tribulations, you're not reading the word, you're not listening to worship music, you're not really talking to God, you're not like trying to grow in your relationship with Christ at all. You think you're just set. You're like, hey, I'm good now. I went to that worship event, I went to that church camp, like, I'm good now, I don't have to worry about anything. And then, just like how he talks about, there is no root in himself. He's not looking to grow at all, these seeds. There's no roots in the ground for these that were sown on the rocky path. And so when tribulation or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately he falls away. It's important for us to find the things to keep growing in our relationship with God. Because if we have no roots in the ground, how are we going to grow? And how are we going to just continue to be greater? Because I don't know if any of you have heard this, but there's no such thing in life. A lot of people say no such thing in life as staying the same. You either get better or you get worse. Because if you're staying the same, at the end of the day, you're getting worse. Because you're just like not getting better. Like if you stay the same and you just live in that same lifestyle, eventually you're going to continue to get worse and worse and worse if you're not getting like 1% better every single day, And so if you're not looking to grow in your relationship with God, sometimes you can be like these seeds that are sown on the rocky path and not continue to grow. And then the third portion of seeds. As for what was sown among thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and it proves unfaithful. This is another portion of us, because some people will hear the gospel message and they'll be like, oh yeah, God is so great, and they'll love all these things. But then they'll get in their car and they'll like listen to Drake instead of listening to worship music. Or they'll live a life of sin or of sexual immorality because they love these cares of the world. They love the things of the world. But at the end of the day, that's still wrong. Like, even if you see the gospel message, it's important that you continue to try and grow in it and not just grow in your cares for the things of the world, right? If you understand what I'm saying. Because the cares of the world can be great, but at the end of the day, they have nothing. They measure nothing compared to the kingdom of heaven, right? And so it's important for us to not be like those third seeds that were sown among thorns, where the devil plants a seed in our heart where it's like, hey, God's great, but I'd rather live in this series of things of the world. Like that is completely wrong, and it proves unfruitful, and the thorns can end up choking those good fruitful plants that are supposed to grow, and it's just completely wrong. And so it's important for us to all strive to be like these fourth type of seeds. Starting in verse 23, as for what was sown on good soil, This is the one who hears the word and understands it. He indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and in another 30. It's important to try and be like that, to hear the word and to understand it, to bear good fruit and yield it, to just live our life growing in our faith, growing in the word, doing all the things we're supposed to be doing, and to not turn to the cares of the world, turn to what we want to be doing instead that the devil places in our heart. But it's important for us to just continue to grow in understanding the word and hearing it. And so then Jesus has another parable of the wheat. It starts in verse 24. He put another parable before them, saying, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while his men were sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared also. And the servants of the master of the house came and said to him, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have weeds? He said to them, an enemy has done this. So the servant said to him, then do you want us to go and gather them? But he said, no, lest in gathering the weeds you root up the wheat along with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and at harvest time I will tell the reapers, gather the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn. And so we're going to skip down to verse 36, where again it's the next slide. That's on me. But it says how then he left the crowds and went into the house. And his disciples again came to him, saying, explain to us the parable of the weeds in the field. And I really like how the disciples asked him again, because they were like, we don't understand this. They're being bold about it. They're not just trying to say, oh, we spent all this time with Jesus in our life. We spent weeks, months, years with him. We know everything. Like, they're not acting that way. They're understanding, hey, can you explain to us the parable of the weeds in the field? Because we don't understand it. And it's really important that the disciples did that, because a lot of times that can be like us. Sometimes we'll hear something and we might not understand it, and we'll kind of double take. And instead of just acting like going with the flow, oh yeah, I understood it, but like you don't. Try and be like the disciples here and try and live and ask God, hey, explain to me what this was. Explain to me what that was. Explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field. And Jesus says, the one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed is the sons of the kingdom. The weeds are the sons of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Just as the weeds are gathered and burned with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all lawbreakers, and throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear. So, when Jesus explains all of this, he doesn't just say, hey, you guys are like the plants of the world. But he also adds, there are evil thorns among you. And when Adam and Eve sinned against God, evil entered the world. Right? There are people who try and say that evil is not in the world right now, and that people are just living their own way. But no, there is evil in our world. The devil is out there. Demons are out there. Like that's not like that's a false doctrine saying that those things aren't happening, because they are. But it's important for us to understand that, hey, while all these things are happening, at the end of the day, we will be in the kingdom of heaven if we continue to grow and if we continue to trust in God. Because at the end of the day, we're not going to have to deal with those devils and those demons in heaven. And just as the weeds are gathered and burned with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The weeds are the son of the evil one. And at the harvest at the end of the age, the people who are reaping that harvest, the people who are picking everything up, they're going to place the good fruitful plants in heaven, and they're going to be throwing the thorns and those weeds in hell, right? And so it's important for us to not grow and become like a thorn, but for us to stay as good, fruitful plants and to continue to grow in sun and like water and all the things that help grow these plants, like reading our Bible and spending time in prayer and listening to worship music and doing all that stuff, just like how plants have to grow. It's important for us to continue to grow as humans, right? And so then we skip down to the parable of the hidden treasure, and I'm almost done here. There are only a couple more parables, and these are all short, but I really like how Jesus goes and explains these really quick. It's like a 2-sentence thing or a 1-sentence thing, and it's the kingdom of heaven is like, or I think it's up here, yeah. The mustard seed and the leaven. He put another parable for them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed that a man took and sowed in his field. It's the smallest of all seeds, but when it has grown, it is larger than all the garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches. Because a lot of us, we might see, and I don't want to use an example that literally has to do with us right now, but a lot of us will see a church like this and start to have unbelief, because there's not that many people in the audience, and I understand that. But just because there's a seed sown into the church that's as small as a grain of a mustard seed, which is the smallest seed, just because that we have something like that, just because there's a grain of a mustard seed in your work or in your family or in your life, just because it's such small like that, doesn't mean that it can't grow and become larger than all the garden plants and grow and become a tree so that the birds of the air can make nests in its branches. Just because something is small does not mean that God can't touch it and God can't grow it, right? And then we go into the next parable. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like leaven that a woman took and hid in 3 measures of flour till it was all leavened, right? And so, yeah, the kingdom of heaven, we might not reap some of the things on this earth that we want in heaven. Just because we grow in our faith doesn't mean that we're going to have all these riches of the earth. We're going to have all these things of the world come to us. That's not what that means. But instead, we just have to wait for the flour to cook. Basically, I know Miss Heather knows all about the flour cooking. I don't know about bacon as much as some of the people in the back, but the kingdom of heaven, it's like leaven that a woman took and hid in the 3 measures of flour till it was all leavened. And maybe I should have her come and preach this part, because I don't know leaven and dough, but at some point we're all going to reap all that flour that has been leavened, right? We're going to reap all that when our time comes in the kingdom of heaven, and that's when all our riches are going to come, and they're going to be greater than anything we could imagine on this earth. So it's important to be strong and to not just fade away because we want things of the earth. And then we go into the prophecy of the parables. All these things Jesus said to the crowds of parables. Indeed, he said nothing to these people without a parable. This was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet. I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter what has been hidden since the foundation of the world. And so, Jesus, a lot of people try and deny that he's the Son of God. They'll say, oh, he was just a great dude, got good teachings. But a lot of people will deny that he was the Son of God, which is completely false. He fulfilled all of these prophecies. We go back, and I'm going to click on this. It says Psalm 78:2. Some manuscripts said it came from Isaiah, but Jesus spoke in parables. In the Old Testament, it tells us that the Son of Man is going to come and going to speak in parables, and he will utter what has been hidden since the foundation of the world. And then we go into verse 44, the parable of the hidden treasure. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and covered up. Then in his joy, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. A lot of times, we'll find things, right? And we'll struggle with them. But it's important to be like this man who found a hidden treasure. He found God. And so he went back to his home and he sold everything he had just so that he could buy this field, just so that he could have this treasure, because he understood how important the field was and the treasure was. And it's important for us to be like that with the kingdom of heaven. Now, we don't have to come to church and then say, oh, this is so great, and then sell our house and just like live at church. That's not what he's saying. But he is saying, come to church and sell all the things of the world. Don't live with all the things of the world. Get rid of all those things and come back and just give everything you have and buy that field, right? And then the parable of the pearl of great value, it's basically the same thing. The kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who, on finding the pearl of great value, went and sold all that he had and bought it. He found this thing of great value, and he was like, I'm not going to wait at all. I'm going to sell everything I have and buy this, because he understood how important that was. And that's just like the kingdom of heaven. It's important for us to not be like, I still need my money in this. This person, the dude who's buying the pearl, he could have been like, but I got these great investments. I got a lot of like pots. I got a lot of jewels. I don't want to buy this pearl, you know. But he understood that the pearl was of greater value than anything he could have had. And that's just like the kingdom of heaven. We don't need to be like, but living a life of sin is still pretty cool. I don't want to give this up. I don't want to give that up. But instead, for us to understand, hey, we need to buy that pearl. Hey, we need to give everything we have so that we can be in the kingdom of heaven. We don't need to keep living in this and that lifestyle and lifestyles of sin, but we need to give everything we have so that we can live in the kingdom of heaven and to just try and live there. And finally, I'll skip down to the end when it said, Jesus, in verse 53, Jesus had finished these parables. He went away from there, and coming to his hometown, he taught them in their synagogue, so that they were astonished. And they said, where did this man get this wisdom and these mighty works? Is not this the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary? And are not his brothers James and John and Simon and Judas? And are not all his sisters with us? Where then did this man get all these things? And they took offense at him. And it's important for us to look into this and say, even Jesus' own people were persecuting him. Even Jesus' own people didn't really believe in him, the people who grew up around him. And Jesus was obviously perfect, but maybe his brothers and sisters weren't perfect. Maybe they all hung out in like James and John and Simon and Judas, or James and Joseph, and maybe they were like, dude, I hang out with James and Joseph all the time. You're telling me his brother's the Son of God? No way. And then maybe the sisters are like, hey, I'm with Jesus' sisters all the time. I see how his carpenter fathers act, and I see how his mother's act. I see how all these people who grew up around Jesus are acting. I even hung out with Jesus when he was little. And they see all these things and they're like, man, how is he the Son of Man? I don't understand. I can't believe that. And yeah, we're not Jesus. But this analogy can be used in our life, because there are people who have seen how we grew up and been around us in different seasons, and they'll say, hey, I grew up around Cole. There's no way he's a strong Christian. There's no way he's preaching on a stage. Hey, I grew up around this person. There's no way he gave his life to Christ. Hey, I grew up around this person. I saw the things she did. There's no way she's going to church. There's no way she gave her life to Christ. But that's completely wrong. It's important for us to not worry about the things we used to do and to just continue to grow and grow in our relationship with God and set our eyes on him. And the chapter ends with how they took offense to him, and then Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his hometown and in his own household, and he did not do many mighty works there because of their unbelief. Jesus couldn't even work there. He wasn't even like teaching. He wasn't even healing people in his hometown because all these people didn't believe. They were like, I don't believe in this Jesus guy. And so Jesus didn't come to him. Remember, God gave everybody free will. It's not like we live in this perfect world where we're all robots that worship God. God gave us all free will. And so if we don't believe in God, if we choose to take a different path, God's not always going to force himself on us. And Jesus is not going to force himself doing works and teaching all these people. But instead, Jesus is going to give them their free will. And at the end of the day, as I close, if you didn't take anything out of my message, I just want to say it's important for us to understand what to live our life like the seeds, right? There are the 4 types of seeds. You had the first type, which was the seeds that were on the path that the birds ended up eating, right? And so if we don't understand something, and we don't understand the purpose of the parables, then it's going to be tough for us to continue to grow. If we're not asking questions and trying to grow, we're just like, seeds fell along a path, I don't understand that. But it's important to not be like that first group, or the second group, where the seeds fell on the rocky ground. And they were really sprouting for a season, and they were really growing. They had just gone to a worship event. They just came back from youth camp. They were like, dude, I love Jesus. I can't wait to continue to grow. And then they didn't grow at all. They didn't read their Bible. They didn't continue on a relationship with God. It's important for us also to not be like the third group, where we grew up around the rocky, or we grew up with the thorns. And we started trusting God, but the thorns were around us. And we went to the things of the world. We went to the cares of the world before we went to God. But instead, it's important for us to be like the fourth type of seeds. Those who, verse 8, other seeds fell on good soil and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears, let him hear. We have no idea what God can do in our lives. We have no idea what God has planned for us. And so it's important for us to continue to grow and trust in Him and just let Him work among us. And I'm going to pray, and then we can all be dismissed and live our own lives. But I'm going to, if everybody wants to bow their heads, close their eyes. Dear Lord, thank you for all these people who came today. Thank you for those who spent their Wednesday nights with us and are just so glad to be here. Thank you for everybody in this church. And help us to all just continue to grow and to just not love for the cares of the world, not to misunderstand what you have for us, God, but to help us grow and want to trust in you in all that we say and do, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. You guys are all dismissed. Do what you